next in our final panel before the lunch break is a panel that will be discussing best practices in online advertising, how we can maximize returns, standardize viewability, better assess attribution, and meet client objectives. Moderating this panel will be the managing editor at ArabNet, Rita Makhoul, who will be introducing our panelists. Please help me welcome Rita.
Hello, thank you for that. I'm sorry, I lost my voice in one of the other halls earlier. Can I welcome on the stage, please, Mohamed Fotouh, Senior Consumer Engagement Manager, from PepsiCO. Rami Saad, Deputy Chief Operating Officer at DMS. Ayman Haydar, CEO, MENA Marketplace. And Naimi, Senior Manager, Digital Mindshare. All right, we've got quite a lot to cover today, so I want to really dive right into everything. But first off, can I please briefly ask each of you to just briefly introduce yourselves? Can we start with Lara ladies first?
Okay, I'm Naimi. I'm the head of the digital department at Mindshare Beirut. I've been with Mindshare for the last 3 years. I first joined them for 1 year managing the social hub, and then I moved to the full scope digital. So.
Hello, I'm Mohamed Fotouh. I handle digital and media for PepsiCO MENA, and I've been with the company for the past 7 months. Thank you.
So I'm Rami Saad, and I help run the operation at Digital Media Services. We're the digital arm of the Shwari Group. We are a consulting, technology, and sales hub for premium publishers in the Middle East.
Ayman Haydar. I'm the CEO of MENA Marketplace, the leading programmatic company in the MENA region.
Let's dive right into this. Let's first start off with measurements. And Mohamed, I want to get your perspective on this, since you represent the brand on stage today. What are the methods that you guys have been adopting to measure, or to find, to measure the impact of the successful? Let's start all over again. Hold on. What are the methods you've adopted to measure a campaign's impact? Let's start from there.
Okay, so it's there are multiple fronts, to be honest, on how that's done, and so basically when we launch a campaign, there are multiple platforms that we tend to kind of advertise on, and we get different reporting, let's say, standards from each of the different platforms. But the hope is that at the end of each campaign, we have some form of research that tells us how the campaign impacted, let's say, awareness of this product, or message association, or purchase intent, for example, and so on. And we tend to utilize the likes of Nielsen brand effect studies or brand lift studies to be able to understand better how the campaign impacted the consumer. So that's on, let's say, I would say how we measure the effect of the, let's say, creative message and how it resonated with the consumer and the audience. And then on the media front, we try and make sure that impressions are delivered in the right way, that we look beyond the regular impressions into things like audience retention, how much time did the consumer spend and dwell on our different ad messages, and how can we do it better later on, and so on and so forth. So that's basically what we tend to look at.
Lara, can I get your perspective on?
Okay, so this is all just the standard. Most brands would be doing this, but I think part of the problem that at least media agencies face when it comes to launching ads and preparing for ads, strategizing, and then measuring afterwards, is that we're limited. We don't have much say in what kind of visuals or what the creative messaging is on the actual content, which is very important, and I'll get to that in a quick second. And two, sometimes maybe the KPIs that a client is measuring is not, they're not looking at the correct KPIs. So, if you're trying to have a campaign, so let's say Pepsi is trying to, they want, I don't know, they have a new product that they're trying to get people talking about, or what have you. They usually have in mind a specific audience that they want to target. They don't really analyze what this target wants. So they don't maybe, I don't know, is fuming. I'm sorry. I'm just saying because a standard brand, this is what they would do. So they have an imagination of what their standard audience is, male, female, this is the age group, this is the social class, and what have you. They don't dive deep, they don't really look into richer data to understand, okay, so what was the consumer journey, this standard target audience, what have they been doing recently, and how can I build on that, on the journey, on what they want, versus just serving them a beautiful video and just hoping that it picks up. So this is where media agencies, through data analytics, from the wealth of the campaigns that we would be running with publishers as well, we would have all of this data already accumulated, and we would be at a better position to advise even on the messaging and the creative that goes into an ad. So this is what I do.
Okay, allow me to add a point here. So I don't think anybody is in a best position to evaluate the success of campaigns. I think all of us need to work together. As an industry, lack of objectives, clear objectives, is definitely a problem. We as publishers serve thousands and thousands of campaigns, and I can clearly tell you that we don't do enough, and I'll start by myself, we don't do enough to go back to clients and back to agencies and say, it's not clear what you're trying to accomplish here. Think about it this way. If you have a Formula One race today, and you rock up in a convertible two-door Bentley, it's a beautiful car, great luxury, great performance, but is this what you're trying to do on that circuit? And so the objective of the actual campaign is the core of, or if you want, the starting point for success measurement that is actually accurate and effective. Agencies are not pushing back enough on clients. Clients are not giving clarity enough around their objectives, but also publishers are not pushing back enough. So as an industry, I would say we need to step up the discussion around what are you really trying to accomplish?
I mean, to add to what the lady and the gentleman said, we're moving from a traditional way of doing and measuring advertising online to a new era, a new age, where we actually have now much better tools and technologies to take this and dig deeper on what works and what doesn't work. But to do that, the technologies are available, but you can never work a technology properly if all parties don't sit together and plan together and work towards the same goal. Because at the end of the day, if it's not, because if we're sitting here, I'm kind of the, I don't know, middleman, publisher, a client, an agency. If we don't all sit together on a table, working towards one goal to achieve, then there will never be a 4-win situation. There'll always be a loser here somewhere. And to do that, we need to move from the real traditional way of looking at measuring things online to using those technologies. So we shouldn't be really scared of trying those new technologies. And when I say that, yes, we need to dig deep into data and use more data to measure how are things going and how we reach the end result.
Nama, I just want to go back to you a bit because you touch point on both creative and KPIs. So what role does creative have on the impact of the success of the campaign? And how do you advise your clients to identify what their KPIs are as well?
Okay, so to answer the creative-related part of your question, at the end of the day, we're in this business to tell a story. Storytelling has been working. It's our bread and butter. This is how a media agency would be able to make a success story out of the campaigns, the client's campaign. But at the end of the day, no matter, we can tell them what works, but it's not up to us to tell them how it should look. I could tell them that, I don't know, mothers, young mothers, young working mothers, they're strong, they're independent, even though they have responsibilities. So we can give them the profile. We can tell them this is the kind of content that they've been consuming, and this is the kind of messaging that they responded to through. Well, supposedly we should be able to do this through A/B testing on different clients and different category brands. And then the creative agency would come and say, okay, I've taken my cues from data that was given to me by a media agency, and I'm able to build something that's scientifically accurate, but that looks amazing. And this, I think, is the new sexy merger, if you will. It's like brains and beauty. this is what would win. So this is, first of all, from the creative perspectives. On the KPIs, this is what we always go back to, and I think any panelist, any speaker will always tell you this. We always start with the client's objectives. If it's leads, then you have your messaging. It has to be rich with call to action. It has to be, how many forms were submitted, how many people reached the thank you page, so of your campaign. It depends, of course, on the media type and the platform or the channel, and to start and end with, it's always the client's objective. What are they trying to achieve? And I would like to add to this that just because we've created something and like the creative agency has made this 10-second, not 3-minute video long, because they have to be aware of what media they are they're distributing this content on. So it has to be shorter and more concise for digital, obviously. So we have to see that the messaging work and what didn't work. So constant A/B testing with constant tweaking. This should be also part of the measurement metrics that we would use for both on creative and on the media agency.
Can I ask a question? How many people in the attendees are actually from the creative agency background? Can I see a show of hands? Creative agencies? And how many of you received data about how your ads have performed from either the agency or the client? That's pretty much the heart of the problem. So I think one issue here is that when we're distancing the creative agency from the interaction that is happening with the consumer, then no matter how artistic and how intelligent that creative artist is at building a story and creating a piece of content that has the right duration because of what we told them as media people, if they're not in tune with exactly how it's performing every single time that impression actually loads, and who is that audience that's actually consuming it, then how are they ever expected to get better at what they do?
I think there's another problem as well that's always facing the creative agencies or the creative side, which is how do you, or the need to adapt to every different platform in a different way, because every different platform has, let's say, a set of types, a set of formats, a set of durations that you have to adapt to, and otherwise then the creative value of your piece of content doesn't really get to see the light in the way it should have. Whether because you'll see sound off in somewhere, another platform has to go to a shorter version of the ad, another platform has to go to a longer duration, and so on. So I think that's another struggle, having to really abide to the needs or the requirements of every different platform in a different way. It puts a big load on the creative agency, and it's also, I would say, a big load on the client side, because you also have to think about every platform in a different way, and then that causes a big headache as well for both sides.
Well, dear client, please give us more time. I mean, really.
Actually, I'm not really.
If brands, and this is also part of the thing that I think every single advertiser, creative or media or even PR, we all suffer from this, and I'm not blaming you personally.
Yeah, of course.
So what happens is, yes, you would face a problem in adapting different visuals for different platforms, but if we had enough time to prepare for this, it could be just one more week, but like, I know that everything has to happen yesterday in our industry, but if it has to be,
Yeah, that's an everlasting struggle that I don't think we'll really get an
let's
answer
collaborate.
too soon. But I'm sure that, another thing I would love to see happening again is that collaboration. So I'm really with you on that. I don't think that's a solution that will reach sometime soon.
There's many conference rooms that are available at the hotel. We'll just do roundtables. We'll just group all of the brands and all of the media agencies here, and we'll just have a big brainstorm.
Yeah.
And we'll impact the ArabNet.
Before we get to the roundtable, I think that's a great idea. I think right now, what do you think, in your opinion, would enhance the collaboration between all the parties? What needs to be done to get you guys all aligned? Do you guys need to start working together at early stages? Would that help?
Well, that actually does work quite well for us. I'm not really sure about your clients, but I mean, that does happen. I mean, you have to collaborate in order to kind of deliver the right message out there, because if you're working in silos, so if the client is not really transparent and clear on the objectives from day one, they don't give you enough time to work and deliver the right kind of message. If they're not in tune with what's changing in the market and what's changing in the media scene and what's happening in terms of technology updates and different trends that arise every day, again, that's a major problem. That should be, I would say, the optimum scenario. I'm sure it's facing challenges here and there, But I mean, collaboration is a must, right? It's a creative agency that kind of does your work, and if there is no collaboration, I don't understand how that relation can work. So I'm surprised that you're saying that, because this should be the case.
No, actually, to be fair, it's not that agencies don't collaborate together, but it's just that instead of working in parallel, like all teams working together, what happens is that creative leads the way first, which is understandable because they are the brand guardians, and yeah. But maybe it's the collaboration that should happen. So okay, now the client would brief all teams. Media agency would come and say, oh, by the way, I have an analysis, I have research from different campaigns in different markets. This is what your audience would most likely interact with best. So you should take these cues, and then we start moving forward. And then okay, so this is the kind of objectives we want to build. You know what, creative agencies, I think this media platform or this other channel would be the best suited for these objectives. So why don't you keep in mind that it should be of this format? And we are seeing it happen more and more often. But the standard, the procedure is that the creative leads the process.
So far, this whole discussion's been about the brand and the agency, but when does the publisher step in, for example?
The publisher is the guy who gets slapped at that.
Sorry?
Sometimes.
I think, the problem is that the agency are claiming that, or they are not getting enough time because everything is needed yesterday. So imagine what happens after that. They come to the publisher, and yesterday becomes day before yesterday, and things need to be done on a timely matter, taken into consideration that you're using a creative which is not 100% accepted by both the client and the agency, but they have no choice but to go ahead with it because the campaign needs to go live, because the sales needs to start selling, and then we ask about performance, because we're talking about performance. So if we talk about creative leading to performance, then this is one of the really big problems that we're facing today. So coming up with a creative on a hasty manner won't do us any good, because it's like a trial and error thing. It might work, it might not work. And at the end of the day, the publisher will have to start running around trying to optimize as much as they can for the campaign to work, because they have no other choice. No time, neither from the client nor from the agency. The campaign needs to run, and if it's not you, it's somebody else. So you need to make it happen. Thus reaching this performance that no one today is happy with.
So I'll tell you what, I think the model is not working. My opinion is pretty much aligned with Mo's. The model of the agencies today being dispersed across a number of expertise is not working to the benefit of the publisher, neither the client. So my belief, and that's entirely personal view, is we've got to go back to the beginning of time when agencies used to be one agency, provided a turnkey solution, had different leadership. You still have the chief creative officer and has his own direction and way of working, and you have media people, and then you have whichever other areas of business you require. But that's that side. Let me tell you a story about why I believe the roles are changing so much in today's world. So a little bit of a sales pitch, right? So we represent 45 different publishers. We see 140 million unique devices on our platforms every single month. That means we see 30 billion data points. We see what people are watching, what series they like, what time do they listen to music, during the day on Rami, what sort of mood are they in based on the music that they have. All this data is sitting in one big data platform. Today, if you're a client and you're not talking to us before you plan your campaign, you're missing out. You're missing out on so many insights that you can get. Here's an example of how this actually works. A smartphone brand came up to us and said, here's a brief. I want you to target blue-collar workers. Blue-collar workers from Southeast Asian origin. So that's a nationality and a specific societal demographic. So we took that and plugged it into the DMP, but also ran the campaign across a number of other segments with permission from the client. We came back with data that said, you know what, your target audience is performing really well, 5 times affinity than the general public to respond to this campaign, but Saudis of a specific income level are responding 5 times as well. in reaction to that feedback. So we're able to go back to that client and help them reshape the way they do target audiences. That day where you used to get, a research company or your own research arm in-house and they do a refresher on who your target audience is once a year, those days are really fading out. You still require them, right? Because they help you understand why they're your target audience. And there's a lot of kind of financial information about their income and their ability, disposable income percentages and so on. But validating that by being open to take insights from any partner of yours, whether it's the publisher or anybody on the agency side, starts to become so important. And that's where I think, back to the point of put everybody in a room and start really describing what you want to accomplish together, because you'll be surprised with where the insight might actually come from.
Just to add on that, and it has been proven, to be honest, in our work that when you involve publishers in the early discussions or the early stages of the ideation or the creative phase, it tends to bring out a much better output when you go to the execution, because again, you kind of heard feedback, you kind of get notes or tips and tricks or best practices of how to use different platforms, which in turn might help you kind of shape the way you want to execute or bring the creative idea to life. That would be in the best form that would live on different platforms as you're going forward with the campaign.
Exactly, which is what a good media agency should be doing. So we should be involving publishers, and we do meet with them, suppliers and publishers, because they would have all of this information that would definitely impact viewability of your campaign. If they tell you, so they're targeting a specific demographic, they will know where among their publications you can actually find these people, which is a crucial thing for ad viewability, where your intended audience is seeing it.
Where is the industry? Like, I've been hearing there's obviously a lot of issues going on within the industry, and this process hasn't been perfected yet, and it's still evolving. Let's say it's progressing and it's evolving. But where is the industry going wrong in measuring the impact of a successful campaign? Are there any standards and measurements? How is this done? Can we discuss that a bit and get away from an actually creating the campaign as well?
Okay.
I'll jump. So I would say three things. The first is lack of objectives, which we've already addressed enough, I believe. The second one has to do with lack of standardization. So to a client today, what is a view is an answer that changes depending on who you're talking about. If you're talking about YouTube, it's one definition, Facebook has another definition, we have a different definition, and the client might have their own definition. It's not so easy to align all these different technologies to measure the same thing and even calculate an effective denominator that can help you make the right decisions. And the third point that I think is standing in the way really is hygiene. So hygiene is things like viewability, which we've addressed a second ago, ad blocking, fraud, all those things, which to me are things that should just become, hygiene stuff that we don't think about, we don't talk about. They're things that are automatically part of the way we're doing business together.
In particular to this region, what steps are being done to standardize the measurements, make them a bit more stringent? Is there anything being done, especially here regionally? We know there's a lot of governance maybe elsewhere, regulators or standardization. What's happening here? What have we come to expect here?
Well, we've been trying to launch the Interactive Advertising Bureau in the MENA region for a very long period of time. And when we say we, it's a group of industry players. So you're talking about publishers on one side, agencies on another side, some research companies, and so on and so forth. Even clients are involved today with this. And we've been trying to do that for the past 7 years. But I think the size of digital back in the days didn't really give us that big of a push to go out and launch such a body. Today, we happily say that we are in the final stages of launching the IAB in the MENA region. And I think from the last meetings we've had, we have almost all the big players involved. And the IAB is not only for the major players, it's also for everyone and anyone that is in the digital industry. So startups or small players can be members of the IAB for as little as $1,000 fee, which will give them access to a wealth of data and information. And I think using the data and information that we will be sharing with each other that's when the hygiene will come in. This is where we will know what are the best practices and getting into the fact that we need to fix viewability by maybe fixing the placement of the ads, checking the loading time of a page, and so on and so forth. So all this comes into play when we share information and we share data. And I think having the likes of IAB in this region will help a lot in taking the whole industry a step forward, which will eventually improve performance, improve or dictates and kind of what to use and what to accept today as a measurement tool when we are measuring online campaigns.
If I just may add here, I think a positive note on this one is that and lately I've been feeling there's a lot more transparency from partners into sharing this data, which allows us as, let's say, clients that are in a lot of cases frustrated or worried from how the ad delivery is going, and then the accuracy of the, let's say, delivery reports or the measurement reports that we get post-campaign. So at Pepsi, we're looking heavily into third-party ad verification platforms and how we can, once we receive whatever measurement report, how we can verify whatever these numbers are, and how can partners be open to these kind of tools to interact with their data sets. And I think recently, even Facebook and Google have been willing to get through an audit with the MRC in the US to be able to also verify how viewability works, all the metrics and standards that they have, and how those apply onto the campaigns for major clients. So that's a positive note that I think in this region is also happening, that there is no lack of transparency for the most part with the major publishers and partners, and that they're willing to kind of integrate with these third-party verification platforms.
Which kind of sucks, because we had to wait so long for these guys to actually move and start allowing access to such things. So, look, we've got Moat, the technology that we use to measure viewability. Just for the sake of the room, I'm not sure we've defined viewability. So, viewability is an opportunity for an ad to possibly be seen by a person. And the problem with digital today that's been identified is that a lot of times the ads actually are served, so they render, but they are served somewhere outside of the actual fold itself. So you don't have even the opportunity to see them if they're not on the screen you're looking at. So there's been an actual standard defined by the MRC, the Media Ratings Council, and that standard is 50% of the pixels on an actual ad appearing on the screen on a place where they can be seen for more than 1 second. And so viewability has been a topic that a lot of brands are in interest of obviously making sure that what I'm paying for is actually being seen. They've been really pushing pretty hard. So on the publisher side, so it's obvious why a brand is interested in it. On the publisher side, really a big part of optimizing for viewability has to do with reorganizing their sites. So as Ayman mentioned earlier, this means literally opening up the hood. And you guys know probably how much effort it takes to change the code of an app, of a site, and refresh it and push it on the marketplaces and hope that it would get updated. So it takes time for publishers to optimize their ad delivery in a way that makes sure that brands are getting the right to place those ads in destinations that are seen. Premium publishers like ourselves actually benefit a lot from that, because it means clients are finally going to recognize more the impact that we're actually delivering for them by showing them non-scrollable experiences that have ads that run for as long as 15 seconds. So DMS has 15 seconds in view time on average. So on average, people see our ads for 15 seconds on the actual screen, and the IB standard around the world is 1 second. So for us, I think it's a normal progression. Our total viewability, by the way, just for the sake of transparency, is 61% at all of in all DMS at the moment. The IB directive is to move your viewability to 70%. It is a bit of a, if you want, a migration and a move that we're all doing in order to enhance the viewability and arrive at that place. Our video viewability, on the other hand, is 90% on average. So it's an ongoing discussion, but completely agree. I think transparency and ensuring that you're enabling access to such information is crucial, because if something is not working, we also want to know why, so that we can sell more of what helps the brand rather than more of what is just being swept under the rug.
I'm going to come back to you with a follow-up question, but first Lemma's been wanting to interject as well.
Yes. I just need to add one small thing, in fairness, for those who are not as premium, because in fairness, there are a lot of small players today, and viewability came all of a sudden to the industry, because even if you give a year time, that's not enough to change. And a lot of people don't have the investment to do that, because it requires some time to work on changing stuff. So in fairness, I think the industry needs a bit of time to get even where Shwayda is today, if it's at 61% viewability. So because Google today, as an average, says that the average viewability is at around between 52 and 54%. And that's still big and high for this region. When I say that, I say it because you have a lot of players that never thought of that until very recently. And in fairness, we need to give them some time to turn things around. And it won't be real fair. The same publishers that used to serve for the same clients suddenly got dropped because we decided that viewability needs to be taken into consideration today, and immediately we need to go from as low as 20 to 30% all the way up to 7%. Rami.
It's kind of like, I'm not going to say anything, I'm just going to say it's kind of like the difference between buying oranges, like an orange used to cost $1, let's say, and now you're buying orange juice, and you expect the juice to cost $1 as well.
Yeah.
But this is orange juice, and this is oranges.
So
yes, they come from the same place.
That's another big factor, because we're still paying the same rate for 70% viewability or 60% viewability, while we used to pay the rate which used to be for 30% or even 25%, because we never knew that it used to be that high.
But how are the requirements determined?
Sorry?
How are the requirements of viewability determined? How are they set?
It's a benchmark that's set by the IB. I mean, they look at what
But
is
that's what you're following here regionally as well?
following. See, that's the missing link today is that we are not actually following anything. We're all self-regulating. So as a publisher, we make decisions. Clients make their own decisions of what they want to follow. But at the end of the day, before we establish an IAB in MENA, which everybody is welcome to join, speak to this guy after the session if you want to. You'll need to, we'll need to step this up and actually establish a MENA norm so that we have a number to look forward to.
But there's something that I don't feel is fair in all the beautiful things that you guys have been pointing out. It's that when we're talking about viewability, you're talking about one publisher. And for example, okay, Google is going to talk about viewability and measure it, in that environment or in that habitat, which is not, viewability cannot be standardized, especially. What I'm trying to say is, when we run a campaign, when a media agency comes and runs a campaign for a client, we never have one channel. I'm just doing Facebook, post promotions, that's it. It's always, we have this whole
mix.
A selection of channels working together. And a part of the thing that we tend to forget is, if we're looking for conversions, whatever the conversion is that we're setting, is it the first time that the user saw an ad on the first channel, is that where we attribute the viewability to, or the conversion to that viewability, or is it the last one? So I think this is something that we need to be looking at into more detail. So digital attribution modeling, when you have a campaign, we don't plan in silos, so why are we analyzing in silos? We should look at the whole campaign. Okay, maybe for this specific audience, we have a peak in conversion that happened after one or two ad servings from different channels.
I think we should be working more with you than any other agency, if that's the case.
No, but this is the standard. I mean, if any media agency and a publisher wants to survive, and we know how extremely ravenous and aggressive the competition is in the industry, in the MENA region, especially after a beautiful 2016, which we will not talk about. If we are going to survive, this is the way forward, and this is how we should be thinking. A client will never trust a brand, a media agency, if we're going to say, you know what, Google is the answer, the MS is the answer. Something's fishy. Are you taking VR from them, or why are you so keen on pushing one specific platform versus the other? So when we look at, when we approach planning in a holistic approach, in a holistic way, I think this also affects viewability, because at the end of the day, you're serving the users exactly what they want to see, when they want to see it, and how they want to see it. So this is how we can impact.
I think so. In principle, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. I just have a small note to add. So overall, campaign viewability is key for sure. But I think the problem is it's kind of hard to normalize, since that everyone is using a different standard. So there isn't there isn't a common way to look at it from all the perspectives. So again, that takes us back to the point of a need for some sort of standard, because in some cases you'll see a view counted after 3 seconds, and others after 15, and others, I don't know, at a click or at the full length of the video and so on. And still, we stand and ask ourselves, what does that mean? And then there's a lot of pressure put on the client, because we're all struggling for the premium placements and the best placements on the different websites, because otherwise I will be paying money for an ad that most likely will not be seen, even though it pops up into the page when a user or a fan or whatever opens the page. So again, I think there is a need for putting a standards, because again, everyone is doing it in their own way. Every new website or every new portal that comes up does it from scratch in the way they feel is more comfortable to them, and they're thinking, this is how it works for us, this is how we do it. And then we, on the other side, have to jump through hoops to adapt to that kind of standard and to those whatever placements they have and whatever standards they have.
No,
and that's
but this is why you would be working with. This is why brands would not be doing this themselves. This is why you either set up your in-house fully capable media team, or you go to a very capable media agency, because that work should happen between the media agency and the publisher, whoever the publisher is.
I tend to disagree there as well, because I feel that it's one team. So I don't look at it as two. Client and agency are one side for me, and then the publishers are
the opposite side.
Another.
We should have
a different part of the equation to be accurate in the description. That's where I'm.
I'm not saying you shouldn't be involved and just come and say, guys, here's my money. Do with it as you see fit. I'll just come 3 months from now and just say you didn't perform. No, but I'm saying when you put the brains together in one room, they will come up with the most scientifically accurate recommendation for you. And at the end of the day, you either say, you know what, I'm sold, I want this, I think this will work, let's test.
No,
at the end of the day, this is the best that they can do.
But I think the recommendation doesn't solve the problem. So even if you recommend, like, let's say, a set of websites that I should be there, or a set of platforms that I should advertise on, still doesn't solve the problem at the end of the day that there isn't one standard of how you measure. And then when you look at it at the end of the day, you might have good viewability on one end, but really poor on the other side, and that's the whole picture. So I mean, of course, you talk to the media agency. Of course, the media agency has the right expertise to be able to define what websites are there, but I think that will not solve the problem of a lack of standard in the market as well.
So I think standards are there. The problem is that the benchmarks that we have and we follow are international benchmarks, which shouldn't be the case. Because in every market, there's a different benchmark, and in every market, something works and something doesn't. And this is why we cannot really copy everything that is done out of the MENA region to the MENA region. And this is another reason for us to come up with a governing body that will come and tell us, for example, we've been looking at what's happening in the MENA region, and viewability in this region won't go beyond 50%, for example. And only then we're going to have to all come back and say, you know what, sorry, but 70% is not doable in this region, because if we look at everything that is being served in this region, the average is going to be 50%. So you have some of them who sell at 70, and this is where premium comes in. And until we have this benchmark, which is specific for this region, which is studied for this region and done for this region, where no one is doing it today, until then, we are obliged to follow some kind of a benchmark. The standards are there, and it's coming from past experience of clients and agencies out of this region. Now, those might not work, or might work for this region, and we can only know once we have somebody really looking at everything that is happening and information being shared across.
So just want to differentiate two things, because we talked a bit about attribution, we talked a bit about viewability. So attribution is about the fact that for the longest time, we've been looking at a football match and giving the credit of the entire football match to the guy who scored the goal. The last guy who touched the ball and actually scored is the only person who did well this game, and everybody else just didn't matter. And that's the core part, or the core issue with attribution. So attribution is really about dissecting how is your media playing. There's definitely somebody who defended your goal. There's definitely somebody that introduced a game. There's the game maker or the game player at the center that decided that this is the direction we should go.
Playmaker.
And then there's somebody, maybe, and then there's somebody that ended up scoring. So everybody deserves credit. In the exact same way today in the media world, when you're only crediting last click, the last person that clicked on an actual ad, wherever that appears, obviously most of the time it's going to appear around search or around environments that are pretty known for performance. Those are the environments that are receiving most of the credit. So once we do attribution models, which I totally agree is crucial for us, we're able to understand how much contribution does everybody deserve, and even more importantly, what is the role that every media is playing in that journey? Who is good at introducing, who's good at assisting, and who's good at scoring? So that's attribution. When I talk about viewability, viewability is, did a person have the opportunity to see? It doesn't mean people saw it, right? Because we all do this. There's a screen this big or this big, and sometimes we just don't look at ads. So it's not viewable, it's the opportunity to be seen. So the viewability for me is about, did people have the opportunity to actually deliver impact in that touch point, whether it's a website, an app, or wherever they interacted with the brand, or not? So take the attribution model as it is. Anywhere where there's unviewable impressions, switch them off and remove them from that model because they have no value to your model. They're just confusing your data. I just want to separate the two because I think viewability to me is hygiene, guys. It's something that we need to plug into our systems and stop thinking about. It's not something that's going to measure the effectiveness of our ads. It just tells us that this has likelihood to have affected you because guess what? Everything else that was not viewable cannot have affected the journey of the user. It's impossible.
And that's exactly my point. I'm glad you tapped into that because the point is, what is a viewable impression in this region? So what is it to everyone that sits in there or has a platform or manages a website and so on? And that's where maybe the confusion I feel is happening, is that there is no one way to look at a viewable impression. Yeah,
because we might not all be the ones to blame. It might be the telecom, because this is another reason for stuff not to work, which is the internet, the speed of the internet, the broadband. So sometimes it will directly affect the publisher, even if he does that, even if the hygiene is at its best. If you don't have a proper internet connection, then this might affect the whole journey, and this might affect the performance and the viewability as well. So there are so many factors that we need to take into consideration and look at when we are doing this.
Yeah, but switch on the lights. Really understand what is viewable and what is not. Decide what you want to do about it later, but you need to switch on the lights because it's data. It's available to all of you within any ad server or within some of the ad servers that are accredited by the MRC. And we should know at the very least where are we in terms of viewability. I think people are getting really hungry, by the way.
Well, we're running out of time right now, so I'm going to switch to the audience. Are there any questions?
Hi, I'm Rosie from MediaQuest. This question is for Mohamed. Because brands are moving they're considering viewability as a main metric. Publishers are trying to push more, banners in the face of the reader to make it viewable, like overlays and pop-ups and what have you. So where does the credibility and the integrity of the brand falls in this? Is it what you want to get a higher viewability, or how do you look at it?
So we look at it that ads that we tend to run have high viewability. So that's why we invest a lot more effort and more time to make sure that we are there where it counts, we are there where it makes sense, we are there where the audience is more likely to engage or understand the message, not be everywhere regardless of where it is, so that we don't really kind of affect what you just mentioned. So we're not bombarding the audience, we're not aiming to be everywhere. Spamming is not in our playbook for sure. So that's why we're very selective on what placements we tend to go after, where the audience would be more likely to engage, and where the audience would be more receptive to our messaging.
What a great question, Rosie, because as a publisher, I can tell you, if we solve viewability the way you're saying, if we just put the ads in front of everybody and make sure they're viewable, the next problem we're going to have is ad blocking. Ad blocking in places like Poland are at 36%. So 36% of the people have access to the internet but see absolutely no ads. And this is terrible for our industry. Just think about the amount of money it costs all of you guys to create content and all the publishers to build content, and how little monetization they're able to attract on the back of that. So you're going from one problem to another. In the Middle East, though, today, what we see, and as I've mentioned, 140 million uniques a month, we see something around less than 5% in terms of ad blocking in the region. And I'm not advocating for shoving an ad in the face of a consumer, because that's really terrible for the brand at first, and then terrible for the publisher as well at the same time.
And I think that's why we tend to go away from intrusive kind of formats into what would be feeling more native, and in the hopes that the consumer would appreciate that and then tend to engage and absorb the message better.
Which is why the standard way of doing things used to be push to broadcast. The messaging used to be like push to broadcast any message to a consumer or a target audience. But now we're more moving into permission marketing and actually engaging them through content and the relevant context for that.
I think there was another question here in the front row. Yes.
Hi, Reem Diab from Thomson Reuters. A little bit related to that question, I think. But what are the top 1, 2, or 3 questions that a potential advertiser or sponsor of your site would ask a publisher, and how would a publisher answer in a language they understand, not to bore them?
But I can ask one question. Give an example of one question I always have in mind, which is how does the platform help me with brand metrics that are not specifically just impressions, clicks, click-through rate, and so on, but how does it go to a lot further, and how does it help me kind of drive something that makes more sense from a brand standpoint, like brand health? How does it impact brand health? That's why I go around to most of the partners we're working with and ask for some form of research to be applied to campaigns that we run with them, so that we are able to understand how that campaign that was launched on X platform resonated and made sense with the specific target audience that we want to reach. So that's one question I always have in mind.
Also, how experimental are the publishers? How open are they for if we suggest a new ad format or ad type or something that would be, tailor-made for a specific client and their specific campaign? Because this niche kind of advertising definitely it makes the difference between it definitely impacts viewability, and it would set a certain brand apart from the playing field. So.
My target audience is mothers. How many of them like technology? That's one question that I can help you answer. Another one could be, if I want to create content and put money behind it, we create 65 videos every day and publish them. We publish more than 1,000 articles a day, so we really, really know what people are interested in. So if you as a brand want to create content and come to us and say, this is my target audience, I want to create this kind of content, we can very, very quickly tell you from the first few minutes what will work and what will not work with that knowledge. I definitely agree on the questions on measurement. Maybe that's an answer more than a question to the first question that Mo would propose. So he asked, how would publishers respond? To us, measurement is 3 things. So it's reach, it's impact, it's resonance. Reach is about how many people. It's all those efficiencies, frequency, and all those different media metrics. Viewability, hygiene sits under that. Impact is about what did people do when they saw the ad. Did they continue watching the full video? Did they watch this many seconds? On what device did they do that? And what sort of interaction happened after they clicked? Did they land on your site? Did they consume even more content? Did they end up liking your social platforms? Did they buy a car? So all of these are impact. And then resonance, which has to do more with what sort of attitudinal impact did I leave on the person? So when people see ads, they either do something or think or feel something. So the doing something is covered by impact. The feel something is covered by research and impact studies that Mohamed alluded to, where we ask users, what do they think of this brand? And if the objective is, let's say, I want to associate myself with sports, the questions will be somewhere around the area of how did Quaker associate with sports, for example, after a Quaker campaign that we've done around sports. So those are the 3 main areas that we tackled measurement in.
All right. Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry, but we're running over time right now. If anybody else has any more questions, because I have a feeling I saw a few hands earlier, feel free to stalk them. They're available right now. Just go ask them whatever questions or add them on LinkedIn, connect to them later. And thank you all for joining us, and enjoy lunch.
Thank you to all our panelists for sharing their different viewpoints, and to Rita for triggering this conversation with her questions. We will now break for lunch. We have almost an hour, so we'll all need to be back here by 2:15, where we will be having a CEO series with Qasat Lishtura, who will be sharing with us how they're transforming their operations with the adoption of technology. So make sure to be back for that. In Hall B, there will be a panel on enabling e-commerce. While at your break, please pass by the Maker Hub in the Tech Fair and try to meet new people. The best way to do that is to talk to the person behind you and in front of you in line while waiting for lunch, because there will definitely be a line. All right, enjoy your lunch break, and we'll see you back here at 2:15 p.m.